Hello, I'm Professor Michael Chi, and I'm Director of the Center for Sleep and Cognition at the Yong Loo Lin School of Medicine, National University of Singapore. I'm here to share with you my thoughts about what is meant by better sleep. It is World Sleep Day, and it's time for us to talk about our favorite modifiable health risk factor, sleep. Good sleep has multiple benefits to mental health, to behavioral health, and cognitive health, which are important to ensure our well-being and performance, as well as to cardiovascular health, metabolic health, and immune health, which are vital for us to maintain a good physical function and a long, healthy health span. In today's talk, I'm going to survey how we currently benchmark sleep, review some of the current sleep targets used and point out why they need improvement, talk about objective sleep measurement and which measures that are collected are important, and finally what we can expect in the future. The need to identify benchmarks and targets is very deeply entrenched in our psyche. But what about sleep targets? The most familiar and well-studied target is sleep duration, and here is the now familiar US National Sleep Foundation duration recommendations. These are segmented by age group and further segmented into what is strongly recommended versus what may be appropriate in these lighter colors, and then finally what is not recommended. These recommendations were arrived at by expert consensus and largely based on questionnaire data, which means that persons self-reported their sleep durations. No differentiation was made between weekday and weekend sleep, neither was there any gender separation. Naps were not accounted for, and the views are largely North America and Eurocentric, even though there is some Asian data embedded in this. Nevertheless, it's pretty clear that there is a strong relationship between sleep duration and mortality, and whether or not that data was collected from the US, Europe, or China, you can see that there is either a J or U-shaped curve showing the relationship between sleep duration and mortality. The details of how these points that mortality increases with divergence from the optimal sleep timing, which is also slightly different across the different samples, matters. Why do I say this? And why is this important? Now, we had mentioned earlier that the recommendations are based largely on questionnaire data. There happens to be quite a difference in the duration that is self-reported overall, and you can see here this is the habitual total sleep time reported by questionnaire. There is a difference between that and the total sleep time reported on the morning after a night's sleep, and the PSG, or objectively measured total sleep time. And the difference between the PSG sleep duration and the self-reported habitual sleep duration match for weekend and weekdays could be as much as an hour shown here. And this difference prevails across age of participants that were sampled. So the key takeaway is that the National Sleep Foundation recommendations tend to be more than what people actually sleep if you measure it objectively. Now this has impact, and it's already been revealed in data from the sleep health, heart health study, and this is a re-report of that data. If we look at the relationship between objective sleep and all-cause mortality versus subjective weekday and weekend sleep and all-cause mortality, you can see that the optimal sleep duration is around 6 versus 7 hours for objective sleep, and that the curve for increasing risks of mortality steepens considerably with shorter sleep, whereas there is a light increase in risk with the self-reported sleep duration. Also, the very prominent increase in risk with longer sleep duration, both for all-cause mortality and for cardiovascular mortality, that increase in risk with longer sleep is steeper in the subjective data, and it's not really evident in the objective data. So this needs to be explored further, and we are now in a position to do that. Still on duration, expert consensus is that there may be differences in what constitutes optimal sleep duration for different health domains. I already pointed out that the mortality U-shaped function seems to be quite clear. You can see that here. This is longer sleep, shorter sleep, not optimal. But for other health domains, that U-shaped function is less clear. There are also differences in the optimal sleep duration that are suggested for the different health domains. But again, this data is evolving. Why I say current sleep target specification needs improvement is based on partly on some of the data I've already showed you, and on another point which is growing in importance. Now, we've only focused on duration so far, but in recent years, it's clear that sleep is a multidimensional construct whose components include regularity, timing, efficiency, satisfaction, and daytime alertness. Evidence is building that regularity and timing are independent predictors of health and well-being. This brilliant graphic from Dan Boise illustrates the additional information sleep dimensions other than duration can provide. Here, within the same person over different nights, a similar duration of sleep can be associated with a different level of satisfaction, with different daytime sleepiness, because something was different about what happened during that night's sleep. Same total time in bed, but different level of efficiency, and then regularity, referring to the consistency of sleep timing and duration across multiple nights. These different sleep dimensions may all contribute to different health domains, but the specific targets for what to attain for each of these domains is currently not known. Categorical analysis or regression models support the general trend that there is a relationship between any of these domains, any of the sleep dimensions and the health outcome domains, but to reiterate, the specific numbers are not known. To add to the uncertainty, it's important to point out that there is significant disparity about sleep collected around the world. Most of our knowledge about sleep is really from North America and Europe and Australia, which have very Western cultures. China and our part of the world is growing in its contribution, but there are large swathes of Africa, the Middle East, and South America that whose sleep patterns and what constitutes normal is not well represented. So this is a graphic from the Lancet review, but we did our own internal analysis of this, covering large-scale sleep studies since about the 2010s. And you can see the coverage of countries contributing sleep data is quite similar, and it's limited to particular ones. Why is this important? This is important because people sleep differently across regions. In this complex graphic, which is based on 220,000 users' data from 35 countries, each contributing 242 average nights, you can see across the different territories or continents that the timing of sleep tends to be later on weekdays and weekends in Asians compared to those in Oceania and in Europe. So later, sleep timings, also more variable sleep timings. And on the weekends, despite the short sleep, there is less catch-up sleep in Asia compared to Oceania or Europe. This, together with the short weekday sleep, leads to more variable sleep in Asia. And as we've heard, this is not good. It's not only shorter, it's also less efficient and more variable. So this is not good for Asian sleep. Now, many Western commentators have attributed this to perhaps latitude or temperature differences, but those of us living in Asia know that cultural factors, particularly work, is an important contributor, and this can be seen from the massively greater hours Asians work compared to our colleagues in Europe or even North America. In addition to the geographic gaps that need to be filled, there's also emerging evidence that underrepresented populations, those with poorer neighborhood cohesion, lower education or lower socioeconomic status, tend to have poorer sleep, and the relationship of sleep and their health and well-being seems to be quite a bit poorer than that for more fortunate people. And this is something that we need to know more about because they constitute a bulk of the world's population. Napping is something that our group has contributed quite a bit to, and it is important to note that the opportunities to nap differ across cultures. This is some material taken from different media outlets. In the West, there is a bias against napping. So why are Brighton's not working? And they blame it to the welfare system, and the graphic has sleep. This is sort of a negative placement for the importance of sleep in the workplace culture. And in the US, it's a federal regulation that employees are not allowed to sleep in offices. In contrast, in parts of East Asia, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East, napping is pretty common, and a meta-analysis or work done around the world, including North America and Europe, shows that there are clear cognitive benefits to short mid-afternoon naps. The benefits are to memory, and vigilance particularly. We talked about sleep regularity several times now, and the purpose of showing these studies here is that the sleep regularity ascertained in these works was calculated based on only about 5 days of data. Work that we have done suggests that this is very inadequate despite the availability of objective data, and to get good estimates of sleep variability, particularly over longer intervals such as monthly, we need to collect between 14 to 17 or 18 nights of data. So there's opportunity to better study sleep regularity, and these need to be taken. Now, I've hinted at objective sleep measurement, spoken about some of the data, but not really talked about the implements or the tools that can be used to collect this. Now, as mentioned several times already, most of the data that we have about sleep recommendations is based on questionnaires, and very frequently these questionnaires are for only a night of sleep, or how long do you sleep on average. This is a sleep diary. It will give you more detailed information, but as I pointed out earlier, self-report is not the same as objective data. Research actigraphy, which looks at the intensity of wrist motion to classify sleep and wake epochs has been around for between 40 to 50 years now, and it is the best studied non-EEG sleep measurement technology to date. And you can see here how it is useful in separating periods of sleep where there is very little or no motion, and wake where there is a lot more movement. Because it's been around for so long, the effects of age and disordered sleeps have been evaluated. But actigraphy has a key weakness, and that is that it does not enable us to reliably detect periods where you are lying down quietly in bed but awake. In today's world, sleep can be objectively measured at scale using EEG and non-EEG technologies. Now, the EEG trackers I put here are mainly prosumer systems, and they are not widely available to the general public. They cost a lot more, and there is also fairly expensive subscriptions to maintain them with some services. So they are confined mainly to research labs. Another point is that in our experience, up to a fifth of participants do not like wearing these devices on multiple nights. So the most influential group of non-EEG wearable health trackers are the devices that are worn on the finger or on the wrist. And these contain multiple sensors, the primary sensor being that of an accelerometer that detects motion, PPG sensor that detects heart rate and heart rate variability, and different devices include a temperature or a skin conductance sensor for modalities I'm going to talk about now. Now they may, especially the wrist wearables may look the same, but they are not the same in terms of performance and the value you get out of them. A less well-known category may be popular with persons who are immobile or who sleep on the same bed every night, or those who do not like wearing something when they sleep. And these are the so-called nearables, which use sensing of body motion, breathing, and pulsations from the body moving as a result of heartbeats, as well as doing that directly or using radar to do that. These devices are less common, but they are quite accurate if you set them up. This is an important slide which makes very clear the limits of inference of sleep with the non-EEG based systems. Now, EEG based systems measure the electrical signals that are the thalamocortical outputs that are affected by sleep. Even the best machine learning algorithms can guess at sleep stages as defined by EEG, but they are not ever going to match them perfectly. However, the autonomic and movement outputs you get from wearables tell their own story, because ultimately they are generated from the same brain that is sleeping. So what sleep scientists and clinicians need to do is gradually learn to remap the outputs of these systems with health outcomes they are interested in. And the reason for this is that wearables are far more affordable for the person who is not unhealthy and doesn't have complex sleep problems compared to the laboratory PSG equipment. One can collect vast amounts of longitudinal data that allow for recurrent measurements of all the dimensions of sleep that are important. You can monitor very densely the benefit of health interventions or treatment, and then you can objectively assess sleep variability. There are also many other uses for these devices beyond sleep, physical activity being the most obvious one, but early detection of febrile illness, heart rate indicators of cardiovascular and autonomic health, and women's health, including fertility assessment. And in the future, there are going to be within device and cross device features that are going to be just wonderful, and which will transform the landscape of health care and delivery. Now, pay attention to this slide because it focuses on the measures you should get out of your sleep tracker. In a PSG system, one records the total recording time as the recording start and recording end period. And then when the person wants to sleep, you turn off the lights, and that is supposed to indicate the onset of intention to sleep. And then lights on indicates the period where sleep is terminated. This device, whether it's PSG or the wearable, will detect sleep onset, the first epoch of the consolidated sleep, and then the last epoch of consolidated sleep. And this is known as the sleep period. Now, in the lab, the time between lights off and sleep onset is the laboratory defined sleep latency. It's easy enough to do in a laboratory, but in the real world, we know that there is a gap between the time we get into bed and turn off the lights and when we actually intend to sleep, the so-called time attempting to sleep start time, right? Because many of us are either reading or playing with the phone in bed. This gives rise to the need to define a different kind of the TAT start, and then defining real-world sleep latency, which devices cannot find it actually difficult to do automatically. Then there's also the uncertainties of timing in the after the last epoch of sleep. Now, which is shown here. So the total time attempting to sleep is compared to the sleep period. The uncertain period, now with lights on, you're saying, okay, wake up, and the recording's done. But with in real life, sometimes before the last epoch of sleep ends, and more motion, or we intend to end sleep, are periods where one may be trying to sleep again, or one is stop trying to sleep and is just simply quietly messaging in bed. Devices find it, non-EEG devices will find it difficult to differentiate these, right? And this is why in the definition, later definition, we need to take this into account. Now, the total sleep time is the sum of the sleep epochs during the sleep period, right? This excludes obviously the times where a person is awake. Now, the current definition of wake after sleep onset used by the ASSM combines the sum of the wake epochs during the sleep period and this question mark uncertain period. And what we're suggesting is, because this question mark period is a question mark, we define WASO as the sum of just the wake periods. So these are the fundamental sleep measures that will appear in World Sleep Society recommendations document on technical terms of used in wearable health trackers. Now, with different health trackers, I'm showing you the comparison between the multi-sensors and EEG. Now, the wearable EEG headband is almost like the electrode applied EEG. You can see it's almost identical in performance. With high quality multi-sensor devices like the Oura Ring, the Fitbit device, possibly the Apple Watch, if you can use it at night, you get hypnograms that appear very similar to those of recorded from PSG on nights where sleep efficiency is very good. Already here you can see a difference in the quality of the recording with the low-cost multi-sensor device, which looks the same but doesn't give the same performance. The problem is when you have less efficient sleep with long mid-sleep, wake after sleep onset or WASO periods. Here the EEG headband is still good, but the validated multi-sensors systems are pretty good, but they do fail in parts. You can see here that there are periods of wake after sleep onset that these devices are not detecting because the person is probably lying very still and the heart rate changes are not sufficient to trigger the wake detection. So how do you choose a wearable device? I would say that for users that require highly accurate sleep staging performance, for example, patient studies in persons with disordered sleep, an EEG-based wearable is a good proxy for an in-lab PSG study. The performance metrics you can look up from our paper. Group 2 is the largest group of people by far, and these are mostly healthy persons who want to evaluate sleep longitudinally and for researchers evaluating population health. For this, a high-end consumer tracker that has whose manufacturers have invested in refining their products and testing them is strongly recommended. Cost-conscious users requiring only basic sleep logging, just a reminder that they need to sleep and they need to do so in a healthy way, can accept the use of a low-cost tracker. However, these are not recommended for research, and I certainly would not accept their contribution to epidemiologic data because of the shortcomings pointed out earlier. Now, the widespread use of sleep tracking with mapping to health outcomes is what I envision the future of sleep and health care to be, where you tag the different dimensions of sleep to outcomes of interest. We already know that through categorical and regression analysis that there is a relationship between all the variables, the sleep dimensions, and these health dimensions, except possibly impaired neurobehavioral performance for satisfaction. We already know that these relationships exist, but what we don't know is we can't put a number to what is recommended in general and for that person. However, with big data and with machine learning algorithms, we will come to that point if everyone contributes the necessary information on both sides of these axes. Now, I've mentioned fundamental sleep measures to focus on. Are there measures you don't want to obsess over? I need to say this because many marketeers and some lay writers talk about the importance of deep sleep. I am not saying that deep sleep or slow wave sleep is not important. However, its relationship with sleep satisfaction is clearly unclear, as revealed in this work by Stefan and from Francesca Ciclari's lab. You can look up the details in the paper, but the results challenge the common notion that slow wave sleep best accounts for feeling deeply asleep. Contrary to all the talk about the importance of slow wave sleep on memory consolidation, Cordy and Rasch evaluated a large number of participants and found no evidence of intra-individual correlations between sleep-mediated declarative memory consolidation and the amount of slow wave sleep. So I'm not saying slow wave sleep is not important because it's clearly reduced in persons with cognitive impairment, older persons with cognitive impairment, but that you should not look at it with the kind of lens that some people recommend if you're looking at your sleep tracker data. Okay, so moving on to the last segment, what can we expect in the future? There are current and future opportunities to refine and personalize sleep recommendations, and I'm really excited about these. I've listed 5 points. First, we need to make better use of longitudinal data. A very senior doctor once said that, told me that he only needs to monitor his sleep for 2 weeks, then he'll know everything about his sleep. I beg to disagree, because the longitudinal data tells us how our sleep patterns are affected by different stresses and strains, as well as joys, how it is affected as we get older, how it is affected when we are physically or mentally less well. Longitudinal data is very important to tie also with contextual information and which then looks at outcomes. There is also the possibility of continually increased accuracy for measuring disturbed sleep. There is also the integration with other health sensing modalities, for example, integration with glucose sensors, that in future we might be able to better manage our stress with integration of cortical sensors and know when difficulties at the workplace affect our cardiovascular and sleep health. And then with the systematic collection of relevant outcome data, we will finally achieve the dream of being able to interpret personal sleep and physical activity data, tying it with relevant outcomes, and that can affect or modulate how we do lifestyle or other therapeutic interventions. I next want to show you a short sampler of some of the work my lab is involved in to illustrate some of these promises mentioned earlier. This is data collected over a period of 21 days. Each row is 1 day. Each row is 1 day, and across the column you see the intensity of physical activity from 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. the following day. And this is the average data from a group of persons, mean age 74 years. And here, these are undergraduates. And what you can see very clearly is that the diminution of physical activity indicates that early on, indicates older persons sleep earlier, they wake up earlier, they get longer duration sleep, and seemingly also more regular sleep. Their physical activity, although concentrated in the morning, is well distributed over the day. They tend not to have long sedentary periods. This is unlike younger persons who sleep late, irregularly, wake up late, and have quite long sedentary periods, punctuated by periods where they do move, and this is typically for meals or during tea breaks. Even their exercise periods after work are less intense than the older retirees. Now, if this is not interesting to you, then perhaps you should find something else to do, because it certainly worries me as a healthcare professional. Now, readiness is something that various trackers promise they can offer, but it's not clear what they actually measure in terms of readiness. So what Dr. Ng, my colleague, studied in 119 university students was to look at readiness in terms of mood, motivation, and sleepiness. They're good indicators of readiness in anyone's book. We studied these people objectively using electronic smartphone-based questionnaire and sleep tracking. So they had to offer their mood, motivation, and sleepiness twice a day, once after waking up and once before going to bed. And then we analyzed thousands of nights of data. And the key finding is that relative to that person's own average, and I emphasize relative to that person's own average, not a group average sleep duration, sleeping more the night before has a positive effect on mood, motivation, and sleepiness, which extends for mood and sleepiness into the evening time. Higher sleep regularity, or conversely, higher sleep variability predicted lower post-wake mood and motivation. After all, who likes to work with a grumpy, unmotivated worker, correct? Finally, we found that naps had a positive effect on mood, motivation, and sleepiness. Longer naps did that. Now, within the same group of participants, we also studied their blood glucose. And this is a busy slide, and you can look up Alyssa's paper. But the conclusion is that of this study, which involved continuous glucose monitoring with the Abbott sensor, 2-hourly postprandial sugar evaluations on certain days, and insulin readings on those certain days as well. The conclusion to take away is that while there is concern in older persons at risk of diabetes that short sleep duration is not healthy, we found that glucose handling in young healthy adults with normal glucose tolerance to start off with may be more resilient to real-life fluctuations in sleep than previously suggested. And this is, to our knowledge, the first demonstration within the same subjects that the things that affect the sleep with the same characteristics can adversely affect motivation, mood, and sleepiness, but have less impact on glucose metabolism. Now finally, I just want to demo this work that is soon to appear on jet lag, something that everyone is interested because Singaporeans love to travel. We collected data from over 20,000 nights of sleep from travelers mainly in US and Europe. And you can see from this chart that going east and going west has differential effects on sleep onset time. You tend to sleep later traveling east and earlier going west, and the extent to which this occurs is dependent on the number of time zones crossed. So far, nothing exceptional, but we also looked at pre-travel sleep disruption, and generally that is disrupted by as much as 60 minutes compared to the baseline. Post-travel, most of us complain of jet lag, but total sleep time recovers within about 2 days, even for 8-hour trans-Meridian flight, although timing and architecture take longer to recover. And what was interesting and encourages us to go on vacations is that short sleepers tend to sleep longer after travel, and late sleepers tend to sleep earlier. So travel is a good sort of reset for your sleep patterns if you get over the jet lag. So with this set of results and data, I hope to enthuse you that sleep is an interesting multidimensional construct which has multiple effects on health. The mapping of sleep dimensions to health outcome has started. The principles are in place, but we need to contribute all important data. Specific recommendations will certainly benefit from objective data collection from wearable health trackers. And finally, longitudinal tracking plus outcome monitoring will help us realize the ambition or the dream of personalized sleep or health optimization. I'd love to thank my colleagues who've contributed both the data and the thinking behind this talk, as well as the collaborators I've had the good fortune to work with. I'm also grateful to our funders and partners. And if you want to review this talk and to look at more work from our lab, please scan the QR code. Enjoy!